It was just another quiet Tuesday morning when everything changed forever. Most people were getting ready for work, drinking their coffee, checking their phones. Nobody expected that this ordinary day would become the most important day in human history. At exactly 6:47 a.m. Eastern Time, radar stations around the world started going crazy. The screen showed something impossible: massive objects moving through space, heading straight for Earth. At first, the operators thought their equipment was broken. These things were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Colonel Williams was having his morning briefing at NORD when the alarms started blaring. He'd been in the military for 20 years, but he'd never seen his team look so scared. The radar operator, a young man named Tommy, was staring at his screen with his mouth wide open. "Sir, you need to see this," Tommy said, his voice shaking. "These objects, they're not meteors, they're not satellites. They're moving in formation." Williams looked at the screen. 12 massive shapes were descending through the atmosphere. Each one was the size of a small city. They moved with purpose, like a fleet of ships coming to port. But these weren't human ships. Within minutes, every military base on Earth was on high alert. The Pentagon was buzzing with activity. Phone calls were being made to world leaders. Emergency meetings were called, but nobody really knew what to do. How do you prepare for something that's never happened before? Dr. Lisa Park was one of the first scientists to see the aliens up close. She worked at a research facility in Nevada, studying space communications. When the first ship landed in the desert, just 50 miles from her lab, she was part of the team sent to investigate. The ship was unlike anything she'd ever imagined. It was smooth and dark, made of some kind of metal that seemed to absorb light. It was perfectly silent, no engines running, no sounds at all. But somehow, everyone knew there was life inside. "It's beautiful," whispered her assistant Jake as they approached in their military convoy. "But also terrifying," Dr. Park nodded. She felt the same way. The ship was elegant, clearly built by intelligent beings. But there was something about it that made her skin crawl. Maybe it was the way. It sat on the desert sand like a predator waiting to strike. The first communication came 3 hours after the ships landed. Every radio, every television, every phone on Earth received the same message at the same time. It wasn't in English or any human language, but somehow everyone understood it perfectly. "People of Earth," the voice said, calm and cold. "We are the Zephyrians. We have traveled far to reach your world. We claim this planet as our new home. You will be relocated to make room for our people. Those who resist will be eliminated. You have 7 days to prepare." The message lasted only 30 seconds, but it changed everything. Panic spread across the globe. Stock markets crashed. Highways filled with people trying to flee the cities. Governments declared martial law. But where could anyone run? The aliens had ships hovering over every major population center. President Johnson held an emergency address that evening. He tried to sound calm, but everyone could see the fear in his eyes. "We are working with leaders around the world to respond to this situation," he said. "We ask all citizens to remain calm and stay in their homes." But people weren't calm. In New York, millions tried to leave the city at once. Traffic jams stretched for hundreds of miles. In London, people crowded into the subway tunnels, hoping to hide underground. In Tokyo, families gathered in temples, praying for protection. Dr. Park was part of the team trying to communicate with the aliens. They set up equipment near the Nevada ship and tried sending messages in every language they knew. Math, music, pictures, anything that might get a response. But the aliens ignored them completely. "It's like they don't think we're worth talking." 2. Dr. Park told General Martinez during one of their briefings. "They see us as obstacles." Martinez, a tough man who'd fought in 3 wars, looked older than his 60 years. "What do they want?" he asked. "Why Earth?" Dr. Park had been studying the alien transmissions all day. She'd found something disturbing. "From what I can understand, they're not just taking Earth," she said. "This is just the beginning. They want to use Earth as a base to attack Mars." The room went silent. Martinez stared at her. "Mars? Why Mars?" The transmissions mentioned something about red crystals, Dr. Park explained. Mars has minerals they need for their technology. Earth is just a convenient stopping point. They plan to strip Mars of everything valuable, then move on to the next planet. This news made everything worse. It meant the aliens weren't just invading Earth, they were planning to destroy 2 worlds. And after Mars, who knew where they'd go next? Meanwhile, inside the alien ships, the Zephyrians were making their own plans. They had studied Earth for months before arriving. They knew about human weapons, human cities, human weaknesses. To them, humans were just another primitive species to be cleared away. Commander Czar stood in the control room of the main ship, looking down at Earth through a massive window. His species had conquered 17 worlds before this one. Earth would be no different. The humans are panicking, reported his second-in-command. Some are fleeing their cities. Others are gathering in groups. A few are trying to communicate with us. Czar made a sound that might have been laughter. Let them panic. In 7 days we begin Phase 2. Then we prepare for Mars, the red crystals. They will power our fleet for the next 100 conquests. Back on Earth, Dr. Park wasn't giving up. She'd noticed something strange about the alien ships. They were perfect, too perfect. Not a single mark or scratch on them. Their technology was clearly advanced, but they seemed to have no experience with with chaos, with the random, unpredictable nature of life on Earth. They're too clean, she told her team. Look at their ships, their transmissions, everything. It's all perfectly organized. I don't think they understand how messy life can be. Her colleague, Dr. Martinez, no relation to the general, raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I mean, Dr. Park said slowly, they might not know about the things they can't see. The tiny things. The bacteria, the viruses, all the microscopic life that makes Earth so alive. It was just a thought, barely formed. But it was the beginning of an idea that would save the world. Dr. Park didn't know it yet, but she just identified the aliens' greatest weakness. The Zephyrians, for all their advanced technology, had made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed that the only life worth worrying about was the life they could see. As the first day of the invasion ended, millions of people went to sleep wondering if they'd wake up to see tomorrow. The aliens sat in their ships, confident and patient. And somewhere in the desert, Dr. Park stared at her computer screen, trying to understand an enemy unlike anything humanity had ever faced. None of them knew that the real battle was already beginning. Not with weapons or words, but with the smallest warriors Earth had to offer. The 7 days passed like a nightmare. On the 8th day, the aliens kept their promise. It started at dawn. Massive doors opened on the bottom of each ship, and thousands of alien soldiers poured out. They moved like liquid metal, flowing across the landscape in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed in the morning sun, and energy weapons hummed with deadly power. The first military response came from Fort Braxton, where General Torres had positioned his best tanks and artillery. "Fire!" he shouted into his radio, and hundreds of shells flew toward the advancing aliens, but something impossible happened. The shells simply bounced off an invisible barrier around the alien forces. It was like they were protected by a giant bubble that nothing could penetrate. Bullets, missiles, even nuclear weapons, everything just bounced harmlessly away. Within hours, every major city on Earth was under alien control. The creatures moved through the streets like they owned them, setting up strange glowing towers that hummed with energy. People hid in their homes, watching through their windows as their world was taken away piece by piece. Dr. Park was trapped in her lab when the aliens took Nevada. She watched through her security cameras as the creatures moved past her building, ignoring it completely. They seemed focused only on major population centers and military bases. "They're not interested in small targets," she whispered to her assistant Jake, who was hiding under a desk. "They want control, not destruction." But Dr. Park wasn't the only scientist working on the problem. 3,000 miles away, in a small university in Ohio, Dr. Rodriguez was having a very different kind of breakthrough. Rodriguez had spent his entire career studying the tiniest forms of life on Earth, bacteria, viruses, microscopic organisms that most people never thought about. He was the kind of scientist who got excited about things so small you needed a powerful microscope just to see them. When the alien invasion began, Rodriguez didn't run or hide. Instead, he did what he always did when faced with a problem. He went to his lab and started studying. "These aliens," he muttered to himself, adjusting his microscope, "they come from another world, a completely different environment." Rodriguez had collected samples of air and dust from near the alien ships. Most people would have seen nothing interesting, but Rodriguez saw something amazing. The area around the alien ships was completely sterile. No bacteria, no viruses, nothing. "Impossible," he breathed. "Nothing on Earth is this clean." He ran the tests again and again, but the results were always the same. Wherever the aliens went, they created a bubble of perfect cleanliness around themselves. It was like they were afraid of germs. Rodriguez called his old friend Dr. Chun, who worked at the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta. Chun was one of the few people who understood how dangerous microscopic life could be. "Listen to this," Rodriguez said excitedly over the phone. "These aliens are completely sterile. I don't think they've ever been exposed to Earth bacteria." Dr. Chun was quiet for a moment. She was hiding in her office at the CDC, which was now surrounded by alien forces. "What are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying they might not have immunity to our germs," Rodriguez explained. "On their world, they'd probably eliminated all microscopic life, but Earth is crawling with billions of different bacteria and viruses, things that are harmless to us because we've lived with them for thousands of years." The idea was so simple, it was brilliant. Humans had been fighting germs for their entire existence. Every cold, every flu, every infection had made the human immune system stronger. But these aliens had never faced that challenge. Dr. Chun started, pulling up files on her computer. "What kind of organisms are we talking about?" she asked. "Everything," Rodriguez said. "Common cold viruses, stomach bacteria, even the helpful germs that live in our bodies. To us, they're normal. To aliens who've never seen them before, they could be deadly," Chun finished, while Rodriguez and Chun worked on their theory. The aliens were making their own plans. In the main ship hovering over New York, Commander Czar was meeting with his officers. "Phase 2 is complete," reported his lieutenant. "All major human settlements are under our control." "Resistance has been minimal," Czar nodded, satisfied. "And, our Mars expedition?" "The ships are being prepared now," the lieutenant replied. "The advance team will launch in 5 days. Once they establish a base on Mars and begin mining the red crystals, we can expand our fleet tenfold." Czar looked out at the city below. Humans scurried through the streets like insects, completely defeated. "How long until Earth is ready for full colonization?" 6 months, Commander. "We'll relocate the surviving humans to the northern territories, where they can't interfere with our operations." It was a perfect plan. The aliens would use Earth as their base while they stripped Mars of its valuable minerals. Then they'd move on to the next world and the next, building an empire that would span the galaxy. But they had no idea that their perfect plan had a fatal flaw. Back in Ohio, Rodriguez was working frantically. He'd contacted every microbiologist he could reach, sharing his theory. Slowly, a plan began to form. "We can't fight their weapons," Rodriguez told a secret video conference of scientists from around the world. "But we don't need to. We have something they've never encountered before, the microscopic life of Earth." Dr. Patel from Mumbai was the first to understand. "You want to use biological warfare," she said. "But how do we deliver it?" Rodriguez had thought about that too. "They're breathing our air, walking on our ground, touching our buildings. They're already being exposed. We just need to make sure they get a heavy dose." The plan was risky and desperate, but it was the only chance humanity had. Scientists around the world began gathering samples of the most common Earth bacteria and viruses. Not the deadly ones that would kill humans too, but the everyday germs that every person on Earth carried in their body. Dr. Chun worked through the night, preparing cultures of harmless bacteria that lived in human stomachs. These organisms helped people digest food, but to aliens who'd never encountered them, they might be fatal. In London, Dr. Wilson collected samples of the viruses that caused common colds. In São Paulo, Dr. Santos gathered bacteria from soil and water. In Sydney, Dr. Kim worked with the microorganisms that naturally lived on human skin. Each scientist was working in secret, knowing that if the aliens discovered their plan, it would be over before it started. The breakthrough came when Rodriguez realized how to deliver their microscopic weapons. The aliens were setting up those glowing towers in every city. These towers seemed to be some kind of control device, probably managing their force fields and communications. The towers need cooling systems, Rodriguez explained to his team. And cooling systems need air circulation. If we can get our bacteria into those air systems, it was perfect. The aliens would spread the germs themselves through their own technology, but they needed to act fast. Every day, more alien ships arrived, and the expedition to Mars was launching in just 5 days. If the aliens established a base on Mars, they'd be impossible to stop. Rodriguez looked at his microscope one more time. Tiny organisms swam across the slide, invisible to the naked eye, but potentially powerful enough to save 2 worlds. "It's time to fight fire with fire," he said quietly. Or in this case, life with life. The smallest war in human history was about to begin. And for the first time since the invasion started, humanity had a weapon the aliens couldn't see coming. The resistance began in the most unlikely places, not with soldiers or weapons, but with janitors, plumbers, and maintenance workers who knew the hidden paths beneath the cities. Captain Santos had been a Navy SEAL for 12 years, but she'd never fought a war like this. When the aliens took control of Los Angeles, she found herself leading a group of civilians who refused to give up. They met in abandoned subway tunnels, speaking in whispers and planning their next move. "We can't fight them head-on," Santos told her team, "but we can be ghosts. We can move where they can't see us." Her team was a strange mix of people. There was Pete, an old subway maintenance worker who knew every tunnel under the city. Rita, a young computer programmer who could hack into city systems. David, a plumber who understood how water moved through the urban underground. And dozens of others who had one thing in common: they refused to surrender. Meanwhile, Dr. Rodriguez was working with scientists around the world to put their plan into action. They called it Operation Microscope, and it was the most secret mission in human history. The plan was simple but dangerous. Teams of people would sneak into the alien-controlled areas and introduce Earth bacteria into the aliens' own systems. Water supplies, air conditioning, food storage, anywhere the aliens might be exposed to the microscopic life of Earth, but getting close to the alien installations was almost impossible. The creatures had sensors that could detect human movement from miles away. Their energy shields made direct assault useless. And they shot first and asked questions never. That's where Captain Santos and her underground network became crucial. "You want us to do what?" Pete asked when Santos explained the mission. They were sitting in a maintenance room 50 feet below the city streets, surrounded by pipes and electrical cables. "We need to get these scientists close to the alien towers," Santos said. "Close enough to introduce bacteria into their systems." Rita, the programmer, laughed nervously. "You're talking about biological warfare with germs. That sounds like something from a science fiction movie." "Everything about this situation is science fiction," Santos replied, "but it's also our only chance." Dr. Rodriguez had provided them with special containers filled with harmless Earth bacteria. To any human, these germs were completely safe. People carried billions of them every day. But to aliens who had never encountered Earth life, they could be deadly. The first mission took place in New York. Santos and her team used old maintenance tunnels to get within 100 yards of the main alien tower. The structure rose from Central Park like a giant crystal, humming with energy and surrounded by alien guards. "Remember," Santos whispered into her radio, "we're not trying to destroy anything. We just need to get the bacteria into their air circulation system." Pete had studied the tower's design for days. There, he pointed to a small vent near the base. That's where their cooling system draws in outside air. If we can get the bacteria in there, it'll spread through their entire facility. The mission required perfect timing. Rita had hacked into the city's power grid and would create a distraction by cutting power to several blocks. While the aliens investigated the blackout, Santos and Pete would plant the bacterial samples. At exactly midnight, the lights went out across Manhattan. The alien guards immediately moved toward the power station, just as planned. Santos and, Pete crept through the shadows toward the tower. Up close, the alien structure was even more impressive. It was made of some kind of living metal that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Strange symbols glowed along its surface and the air. Around it felt electric. Pete worked quickly, opening the vent cover with tools he'd used for 30 years of city maintenance. "This is it," he whispered. "Just like opening any other air system." Santos carefully poured the bacterial solution into the vent. It looked like ordinary water, but it contained millions of common Earth bacteria that Dr. Rodriguez had specially prepared. Within minutes, the tower's circulation system would spread these microscopic organisms throughout the alien facility. "Done," Santos said. "Let's get out of here." They made it back to the tunnels just as the alien guards returned. The creatures had no idea what had just happened. To them, it had been a minor power outage, quickly fixed. They never suspected that their own air system was now carrying invisible invaders. Similar missions took place in cities around the world. In London, a team led by former SAS soldier Lieutenant Brooks infiltrated the alien tower near Big Ben in Tokyo. A group of ninjas, real modern ninjas who worked as security consultants, used their ancient stealth skills to plant bacteria in the alien water systems, but the most daring mission happened in Moscow, where Dr. Volkov himself insisted on leading the attack. He was 65 years old and had spent his entire career studying Russian bacteria. When younger scientists volunteered for the dangerous mission, he refused. "These are my bacteria," he said firmly. "I know them better than anyone." "I should be the one to introduce them to our alien guests." Volkov's team used the old Soviet-era underground tunnels that connected government buildings. These passages had been built during the Cold War and were perfect for moving unseen through the city. The Moscow alien tower was different from the others. It was larger and seemed to be some kind of command center. Alien officers moved in and out constantly, and the energy readings were off the charts. "This is their main communication hub," Volkov explained to his team. "If we can contaminate this facility, it might affect their coordination across the entire planet." The mission almost failed when they encountered an alien patrol in the tunnels. But Volkov's team included Alexei, a former circus acrobat who could move like a cat in the dark. He led the aliens away while Volkov completed his work. The old scientist worked with steady hands, introducing his specially prepared bacteria into multiple systems throughout the alien facility. These weren't just any germs, they were bacteria from the Moscow subway system, organisms that had survived decades of harsh Russian winters and millions of human passengers. "If anything can take down an alien," Volkov muttered as he worked, "it's bacteria that survived the Moscow metro." While these underground missions were happening, the aliens remained completely unaware of the threat. They were focused on their Mars expedition, which was now just 2 days away. Commander Tsar stood in his control room, watching the final preparations. Massive ships were being loaded with mining equipment and colonization supplies. The red crystals of Mars would soon power an unstoppable alien fleet. "Status report," Tsar commanded. "All expedition ships are ready, Commander," his lieutenant replied. "The advance team of 50,000 warriors will establish the Mars base, then signal for the main fleet." Tsar nodded with satisfaction. Earth had been easier to conquer than expected. The humans had offered almost no real resistance. Soon Mars would fall just as easily, and Earth security? "Perfect, sir. The humans are completely contained. We've detected no organized resistance activity." It was true. The alien sensors could detect large military movements, weapons fire, and electronic communications. but they couldn't detect a handful of people moving through maintenance tunnels, carrying containers of invisible bacteria. Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring the situation from his lab in Ohio. He had communication with resistance cells in 12 major cities, all reporting successful bacterial deployments. But he had no way of knowing if the plan was working. "How long before we see results?" asked Dr. Chun over their encrypted video call. "Could be hours, could be days," Rodriguez replied. "These bacteria need time to multiply and spread. The aliens' immune systems have to encounter them, recognize them as foreign, and then ... It was the waiting that was hardest." Rodriguez stared at his microscope, where Earth bacteria swam in their tiny world, unaware that they might be humanity's last hope. In alien facilities around the world, the invisible war had already begun. Microscopic organisms were multiplying in air systems, water supplies, and food storage areas. The aliens continued their daily routines, breathing contaminated air and touching contaminated surfaces. The countdown to Mars continued. In 48 hours, the alien expedition would launch. And Earth's window of opportunity might close forever, but deep in the tunnels beneath every major city, human resistance fighters were already planning their next moves. The secret war was just beginning. The first sign that something was wrong came at 3:17 a.m. in the New York facility. Alien warrior Keth was on patrol duty when he suddenly felt dizzy. At first, he thought it was just fatigue from the long Earth assignment. But then his vision started blurring and his breathing became difficult. Keth had been a soldier for over 200 years. He'd fought on 17 different worlds and never felt sick once. The Zephyrian race had eliminated disease from their society thousands of years ago. But now, something was very wrong with his body. He stumbled toward the medical bay, his metallic armor feeling heavier with each step. By the time he reached the door, he could barely stand. Other warriors found him collapsed on the floor, his body trembling uncontrollably. Dr. Park was monitoring alien communications from her hidden lab in Nevada when she intercepted the first distress calls. The aliens were speaking in their own language, but the translation software she developed was working perfectly. "Medical emergency in Sector 7, came the panicked voice. "Multiple warriors experiencing unknown symptoms. Requesting immediate assistance." Dr. Park's heart started racing. Could Rodriguez's plan actually be working? She listened carefully as more reports came in. "Warriors in Sectors 3, 5, and 9 are also falling ill," another voice reported. "Symptoms include fever, nausea, respiratory distress, and system failure." Within 6 hours, similar reports were coming from alien facilities around the world. In London, 15 alien soldiers had collapsed during their morning patrol. In Tokyo, an entire alien command post had to be evacuated when 30 warriors became too sick to stand. Dr. Rodriguez was in his lab when Dr. Chun called with the news. "It's working," she said, her voice barely containing her excitement. "Hospital networks in 12 cities are reporting unusual electromagnetic interference." "That's probably alien medical equipment trying to figure out what's happening." Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. "The bacteria are doing exactly what we hoped. The aliens' immune systems have never seen anything like this. But the aliens weren't giving up without a fight." In the main command ship over New York, Commander Czar was dealing with the crisis personally. His best medical officers surrounded him, all looking confused and frightened. "How many warriors are affected?" Czar demanded. "Approximately 4,000 across all Earth facilities," reported Chief Medical Officer Vem. "The number is growing." Every hour, Czar's face darkened. In 800 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. "What's causing it?" "We don't know, Commander," Ven admitted. "Our medical scanners can't identify any toxins or weapons. The affected warriors show signs of infection, but we've never encountered the organisms causing it." The word infection sent shock waves through the alien command. The Zephyrian race had conquered disease so long ago that most of them had never even heard the word used seriously. "Infection?" Czar repeated. "That's impossible. We eliminated all pathogenic organisms from our society." "Yes, sir," Ven said nervously. "But these aren't organisms from our society. They appear to be native to Earth, microscopic life forms that somehow entered our systems. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Dr. Volkov was watching his bacteria work their magic. The Russian scientist had planted his organisms in the alien command center 3 days ago, and now the results were spectacular. 22 alien officers had fallen ill, including what appeared to be a high-ranking commander. "Beautiful," Volkov whispered as he monitored alien communications. "My little Moscow metro bacteria are making themselves at home." The bacteria Volkov had used were particularly hardy. They'd survived decades in one of the world's busiest subway systems, fighting off cleaning chemicals and adapting to constant temperature changes. To organisms that tough, alien biology was just another environment to conquer. Captain Santos was leading her resistance team through the Los Angeles tunnels when the first good news reached them. Rita, their computer expert, had hacked into alien communications and was translating the messages in real time. "They're calling it the invisible plague," Rita reported excitedly. "Their medical teams are completely baffled. They don't even have words for what's happening to them." Santos felt a surge of hope. For weeks, her team had been fighting a war. They couldn't win with weapons they didn't have. But now, finally, they were getting somewhere. What about their Mars mission? Santos asked. Rita's fingers flew over her keyboard as she accessed more alien transmissions. "That's the best part," she said with a grin. "They're talking about delaying the launch. Too many key personnel are sick." The Mars expedition had been scheduled to launch in 18 hours. 50,000 alien warriors were supposed to establish a base on the Red Planet and begin mining the precious crystals that would power their galactic empire. But now, with thousands of aliens falling ill every hour, the mission was in serious trouble. In the alien medical bay on the New York ship, Chief Medical Officer Venn was fighting a losing battle. Traditional Zephyrian medicine was useless against Earth bacteria. Their medical technology was designed to repair injuries and enhance performance, not fight microscopic invaders. "We need to evacuate the affected warriors," Venn told Commander Czar during an emergency meeting. "Remove them from the contaminated environment." "Evacuate where?" Czar demanded. "The contamination appears to be everywhere on this planet." That was the terrifying truth the aliens were beginning to understand. Earth wasn't just contaminated in a few locations. The entire planet was crawling with microscopic life. Every breath of air, every drop of water, every surface they touched was alive with organisms their bodies couldn't handle. Dr. Rodriguez was working around the clock, monitoring the bacterial spread through intercepted alien communications. The reports were better than he dared to hope. Earth bacteria weren't just making aliens sick, they were spreading throughout their ships and equipment. "The contamination is reaching their Mars expedition vessels," Dr. Chun reported during their LATEST video conference. "Their own air circulation systems are carrying the bacteria to every part of their fleet." It was the perfect biological storm. The aliens had designed their ships to be perfectly clean environments with air and water circulation systems that spread everything evenly throughout their vessels. Now those same systems were spreading Earth bacteria to every corner of their fleet. The breaking point came during the pre-launch inspection of the Mars expedition flagship. Alien engineers discovered bacterial colonies growing inside critical navigation systems. Computer components that had never encountered organic life were failing as microscopic organisms interfered with their delicate electronics. "Abort the Mars mission," Commander Czar ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "All expedition vessels ought to remain in orbit until we can solve this contamination problem." The order sent shock waves through the alien fleet. For the first time in their history, the Zephyrians were delaying a conquest because of something they couldn't see or understand, but the bacteria weren't finished yet. Earth's microscopic defenders were just getting started, and they were multiplying faster than alien medical teams could study them. Every hour brought new infections, new system failures, and new evidence that the invaders had seriously underestimated their tiny opponents. In hidden labs around the world, human scientists monitored the battle between alien technology and Earth biology. For the first time since the invasion began, Humanity was winning a war they'd never expected to fight. The aliens had come to conquer two worlds, but they were being conquered by organisms too small to see, and the invisible army was just beginning its assault. 3 weeks after the Mars mission was delayed, Commander Czar stood in his medical bay staring at something that should have been impossible. Half of his warriors were too sick to fight. The other half were getting weaker every day, and his medical officers still had no idea how to stop it. "Commander," Chief Medical Officer Venn reported with a trembling voice, "we've lost contact with the London facility. The entire command structure there has ... collapsed." Czar felt something he'd never experienced before in 8 centuries of conquest: fear. Not fear of weapons or armies, but fear of an enemy he couldn't see, couldn't fight, and couldn't understand. "What about the other Earth facilities?" he asked. "Moscow is operating at 20% capacity. Tokyo has been abandoned. The warriors in Los Angeles are too weak to maintain their posts." Then paused, then delivered the worst news. "Sir, we're detecting the same contamination in our orbiting ships." That was the moment Czar realized they had lost. The bacterial infection hadn't just spread through their Earth facilities, it had reached their space fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology they'd brought to conquer Earth was now contaminated with microscopic life. Dr. Rodriguez was in his Ohio lab when the first alien ship began to malfunction. He was monitoring their communications when desperate voices started reporting system failures throughout their fleet. "Navigation computers are failing on Vessel 7, came one panicked transmission. "Biological contamination detected in Maine. Processing units. Life support systems compromised on Vessels 12 through 15, reported another voice. Unknown organisms interfering with air purification systems." Rodriguez couldn't help but smile. The bacteria weren't just making aliens sick, they were literally eating the alien technology. Earth's microscopic life had found alien computer systems to be a perfect new habitat. Captain Santos emerged from the Los Angeles tunnels for the first time in weeks. The city above ground was strangely quiet. Alien patrols that had once filled the streets were nowhere to be seen. The energy towers still hummed, but many of them were flickering and sparking. "Where are they?" asked Pete, the old maintenance worker who'd helped with their first mission. "Sick," Santos replied, looking up at the alien ships hovering overhead. "Too sick to control us anymore." It was true. Around the world, alien occupation forces were falling apart. Warriors who had once seemed invincible were now struggling just to stay alive. Command structures were breaking down as officers succumbed to Earth bacteria they'd never encountered before. In the main alien medical facility, Chief Medical Officer Venn was fighting a hopeless battle. Traditional Zephyrian medicine was completely useless against Earth microorganisms. Every treatment they tried failed. Every day brought new infections and new system failures. "We need to evacuate," Venn told Commander Czar during what would be their final meeting. "Leave Earth immediately, before the contamination spreads further." But Czar knew it was already too late. "Look at the reports," he said, gesturing to the screens around them. "The contamination is in every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment. We can't outrun something that's already inside our technology." The alien evacuation began in desperation rather than strategy. Ships that could still function tried to leave Earth's atmosphere, but many didn't make it far. Navigation systems failed as bacteria interfered with their computers. Life support systems broke down when microscopic organisms clogged their filters. Dr. Park watched from her Nevada lab as alien ships began falling from the sky. Not shot down by human weapons, but brought down by the tiniest life forms on Earth. It was the most incredible victory in human history, won by organisms most people couldn't even see. "They're abandoning the London facility," Dr. Park reported to Rodriguez over their secure connection. "Alien survivors are trying to reach their ships, but most are too weak to make the journey." One by one, the great alien towers went dark. The energy shields that had protected the invaders flickered and died. The weapons that had seemed so powerful fell silent as bacterial contamination reached their control systems. The most dramatic failure happened with the Mars Expedition Fleet. Commander Czar had ordered the massive ships to attempt an emergency departure, hoping they could at least complete their original mission. But as the vessels tried to leave Earth orbit, their systems began failing catastrophically. The flagship, a ship the size of Manhattan that was supposed to carry 50,000 warriors to Mars, made it halfway to the Red Planet before its navigation computers completely shut down. Bacterial colonies had grown so thick inside the ship's processors that they could no longer function. "Mayday, Mayday," came the desperate transmission from the flagship. "All systems failing, life support compromised, engines offline." Dr. Rodriguez listened to the alien distress calls with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. He felt no joy in their suffering, but he knew this was humanity's only chance for survival. They never understood what they were fighting, he told Dr. Chun during their final conference call. They came here thinking Earth was just rocks and water and large animals. They never realized that the real power of this planet is in the smallest things. The final alien transmission from Earth came from Commander Czar himself. His ship was drifting powerless in space, life support systems failing, crew too sick to function. But instead of anger or threats, his message was almost philosophical. "To the humans of Earth," Czar's weak voice crackled over the radio, "we came here believing we were the superior species. We had conquered 17 worlds with our technology and our weapons. But you defeated us with something we never considered. The invisible life that shares your world." He paused, coughing. "We thought life was about size and strength and intelligence. You showed us that life is about adaptation and diversity and cooperation. Your planet is truly alive in ways we never imagined." The transmission ended there. Commander Czar's ship joined dozens of others drifting silently in space. Their crews succumbed to Earth bacteria. They had no defense against. Captain Santos stood in the middle of Los Angeles, watching the last alien tower flicker and die around the world. Similar scenes were playing out. Alien occupation forces had simply vanished. Not destroyed by human weapons, but overwhelmed by invisible defenders they'd never suspected existed. "It's over," she said into her radio. "The aliens are gone." But the real heroes of this war were still invisible to the naked eye. In labs around the world, scientists like Dr. Rodriguez studied the bacteria that had saved humanity. These microscopic organisms had no idea they'd won the greatest battle in Earth's history. They were just doing what they'd always done, living, adapting, and surviving. Dr. Park spent the next month studying abandoned alien technology, trying to understand how Earth bacteria had so completely defeated advanced alien systems. What she found amazed her. The aliens' technology was incredibly sophisticated but also incredibly sterile. It had no defenses against biological contamination because the aliens had eliminated all biological threats from their own world. They made themselves too clean, Dr. Park explained in her report to world leaders. They created a perfect, sterile society that was completely helpless against the messy, chaotic, beautiful life of Earth. The abandoned alien ships became monuments to humanity's strangest victory. Museums were built around them, and children learned about the day Earth was saved not by heroes with weapons, but by tiny organisms that no one could see. Years later, when people told the story of the alien invasion, they always ended with the same lesson. Sometimes the smallest things are the most powerful of all. Earth had been saved by its tiniest defenders, proving that life finds a way to protect itself in the most unexpected forms. The aliens had come to conquer 2 worlds, but they were conquered by a planet that was more alive than they ever imagined possible.